With us today, talking about exercising with type 1 diabetes, again, is Andrea, or Andy, or you may know her as Lala Williams. Many names. If you are familiar with Camp Leo, you will have seen her around there as one of our volunteers doing crafts and as an assistant camp director for our middle school session. And you may be familiar with her work with JDRF as well. But we're so grateful to have you here joining us, and I'll let you do a little introduction of yourself. We had another panelist who was going to join us this morning, and unfortunately at the last minute they were unable to join us. So we are going to hear all of I want to call you Lala.
That's fine. You can call me Lala.
All of Lala's great knowledge that she's going to share with us. I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, like Catherine said, my name is Andrea, or my friends call me Andy, and my campers call me Lala. So you can choose whichever name works for you. I like them all. I think Lala is still my favorite because it just makes me think of camp. So I actually, I know sometimes at camp, the kids choose your name, but I was able to choose this name for myself. And it's because I like to sing at camp. I commonly have a speaker in my camp backpack and I play a lot of songs. So I did have to veto the song. Fun fact, I had to veto the song Shiny from Moana because the campers wanted me to play it all the time. And I was really just sick of that song. After a couple days at camp, I was like, oh no, we're not playing that song anymore. But fun days at camp. I'm so sad that we couldn't get together this year, but you know, hopefully in the future we can. But I know exercise is a big topic with T1D, and it does take a lot of balance, and it can seem very overwhelming at times. And I will tell you that one of the things is there's just really no straight answer for how to figure it out. It is a lot of trial and error. And I am a very active person. I do, I know we were talking on the travel panel, but for some of you that weren't on that panel, I am a big hiker and backpacker. But some of the other things that I do is I actually bike ride a lot. I recently did, for my first year this year, did the JDRF ride. That was really fun. So I'm a big biker, but I also lift really heavy weight. So I do some power lifting, which makes me sound, I feel like, really macho, but I'm not. But it's a really good exercise that I have found for working with my blood sugars. When it's a rainy day and I don't always feel like going to the mountain. But I will say that most of my exercise is via hiking, backpacking, biking, and weightlifting. So I've really found kind of my personal exercise formula, but like I said, everyone is really different. I know the other panelist was going to talk somewhat about running. I do run sometimes. Unfortunately, my knees and my shins don't like me running. So that is why I've turned to biking. Although I will say that grabbing your glucose gels is much more challenging on a bike than it was running. So I do miss running for that regard. But I think that exercise is a super important part for me personally managing my T1D. If you are looking for some resources, some of the ways that I've learned to exercise and work through kind of my bolus, what I'm eating, when I'm exercising, what type of exercising I'm doing. I've relied a lot on some of the talks that I've watched by Gary Shiner. He's the author of Think Like a Pancreas. He has really helped me kind of think through my exercising. And he kind of taught me one of the rules that I kind of live by is exercising at least once like every 2 days. So I always, and even if it's just like going for a walk for 30 minutes, we all know the power of a good walk when your blood sugar's high. I think that is like my best solution. Even at work, I would be like, oh, my blood sugar is high, I'm gonna go for a walk. and people would be like, oh yeah, go for it. Like everyone kind of understands that no matter if I work in type 1 diabetes or if I'm not working in type 1 diabetes, me and a manager always have the consensus that if my blood sugar is high and I need to go for a walk, that is the best thing I can do. Because sometimes walking for me works faster than my insulin would. So, but always walk with glucose, because I've gone the other way where it's too long a walk and go low. But with exercising, for me personally, I do a balance of like cardiovascular exercise and weights. I have found that for me, actually, after a good heavy lifting session, my blood sugars are solid for like a 48-hour period. I personally have a longer insulin sensitivity go with weightlifting. Now with weightlifting for me personally, there are some tricks of the trade. You definitely can start with certain types of lifts. So if I'm doing something really leg heavy, so say we're doing squats, or my trainer has one time made me push a really heavy cart and my blood sugar went sky high. I went from 105 to 272 because my legs were working so hard and there was such an influx of glucose into my muscles from the glycogen storages breaking down. So you really, that was my personal reaction. Again, it's all just kind of your muscle makeup, how much insulin you have on board, your current sensitivity. But for me, it's been kind of a good balance of that cardiovascular and weightlifting. But if I'm doing something such as, so actually there's like a common thing among runners when I was training for a half marathon. Catherine, you were able to complete one. I was not. My body just, my knees weren't having it. But if my blood sugar was going, I still do this on my little runs. If my blood sugar is starting to go a little bit low, I do a sprint and it helps spike up my blood sugars. So because for me personally, I've noticed that if I'm doing a sprint motion or something very quickly, my blood sugars will spike, rather than if I do like a long steady walk or I'm doing a long steady run, my blood sugars have a tendency to come down. Some of my favorite tricks of the trade when I'm exercising is I carry a glucose gel, or if you want something slimmer, like when I'm running or biking, I always have these little fruit leathers because they're really skinny. I can tuck them into leggings or a pocket of a jacket. Really quick grab and can do that, or I use the Transcend glucose gels. I often will have them next to maybe the weights. You know, I'm commonly seen even with a juice box sometimes traveling with me around, or I have it close by, or I have a little fanny pack that I have hooked to me that's got all the good stuff in it. That is common, but for me, probably the most preparation with exercising does come getting ready for those backpacking and hiking trips. So for me, the trick is you have to be really prepared to have nothing around you, which is tough. So then you're carrying it all on your back. And so things like keeping insulin somewhat cold, not in the sun. One of my tricks is putting my insulin where my water is. I will often carry a water bladder. And so I make sure my water is really cold and I put my insulin in the little backpack slip pocket with it. That's one of the tricks. I always keep it in one of the further down pockets, so it's never in direct sunlight. I use this rule for day hikes and for my backpacking trips. Again, I'm always carrying more glucose. I learned the hard way, always carry more glucose than you think you'll need. Because I have gotten on a hike before that was way harder than I thought it was going to be and way longer and needed as much glucose. I went on a day hike recently and it was about a 7-mile hike. And it ended up being a lot harder than I thought. And I ended up consuming 125 grams of sugar before I got to the top. And couldn't get my blood sugar above 80 that whole time. And I was like, I've been hiking forever and this happened to me. So it definitely, there's learning lessons every day, but always carry a lot of sugar. in my opinion. And another thing I do is carry pixie sticks. Those are like a fun way to kind of maintenance as you're hiking. They're very lightweight. They don't take up a lot of space. I learned this trick from one of my other T1D friends who is a big backpacker. So it really is exercising with T1D. It's, for me personally, this might sound like a lot. When I'm going in for a short exercise, say I'm going to hit the gym, I kind of think about it about 2 hours before, what I'm going to eat, what I would kind of like my blood sugar targeted at. I have a tendency for my personal diet. I always try to make sure there's a really good balance of carbs and protein before a workout, and throw in a little fat in there, but I always try to get a pretty close balance of carbs and protein. And then say my blood sugar is kind of trending down a little bit. I'm on a Dexcom, so I can see the trends. But I have totally been on an exercise bike and had my blood sugar meter right there and would check, like, you know, when my Dexcom's not working. If your Dexcom's not working, that can be really frustrating when you're working out. But I have totally been that person still checking my blood sugar. And also, I think it's important. The people at my gym, when I can go, I can't go right now, but when I can go, they also know I have type 1 diabetes. So I think that's an important conversation to have. I actually, due to me going there, they always keep, not that I've actually had to use them, but they always keep glucose tabs behind the counter now, just in case of an emergency. So I do think that's an important conversation. I also have done Orange Theory in the past, and because I had educated them on type 1 diabetes, it inspired the whole Orange Theory region to carry glucose gels at all times behind their counters. So when exercising, I think when you're exercising around people or the gym, it's really important for them to know that you have T1D, because even as experts as we think we are, something comes up. So, but for me, exercise is it also is a big mental health thing for me. It helps me work out that angsty energy that I think we're all cooped up with right now. So doing things and keeping a good balance of, maybe one day I just feel like doing 10 minutes of yoga. Maybe one day I feel like going for a run or a hike. But it's all just, it definitely is a balance, and you have to really work with your doctor that kind of to help figure out your best approach to exercise. For me personally, I use an InPen. And I use Tresiba for my long acting. I also realized, I didn't tell you this, I told on the other panel, so sometimes I apologize. I've been type 1 for 11 years, and my mom is also type 1. So that we have a good kind of rapport of what's our favorite low blood sugar snacks and who forgot their Humalog pens when we're together. So that has happened. Been like, oh no, my pen didn't make it in my purse, or didn't make it in the gym bag, or didn't make it on this walk. So we all have our fanny packs full of our goodies that we share. I don't want to take up too much of the time if there is questions, Catherine. So.
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions that came in. And I just wanted to say, yes, I have run a half marathon before. I did it a time. But
it was Disney World.
It was at Disney World. So I've had type 1 diabetes. This November will make 7 years. And for my first diaversary, I was kind of in this mindset, because I was an adult when I was diagnosed, where I was like, okay, I can do all the things I did before, but it's how I do them. I have to figure out how to do them. Now, it's funny I say that, because then I ran a half marathon, and I don't run. I'm not a runner. That was never a thing that I did before. But mostly I wanted to go to Disney World, and my sister was like, there's this run, you should come. It's at Disney World. I was like, I don't want to go. She goes, it's at Disney World. And I was like, but I don't run. And she goes, but it's at Disney World. Long story short, I did it. So I trained, I did all the things, and I did complete a half marathon a week before my first diaversary. And it was quite a way to learn about managing type 1 diabetes, is by doing a long distance run like that. But I did not have a Dexcom through the beginning of it, which required, you know, when you're running that I carried a fanny pack. Some people do a spy belt. I had a spy belt for a little bit too. And I actually really liked the, I don't remember what they're called, but it's not, the spy belts are a lot smaller and they don't carry as much. And I felt like they were really bulky, where you were carrying your supplies. And so there's these running belts, and they're, you know, probably 4 inches wide, and it goes all the way around, and it has, you know, 3 or 4 slits around the belt that you can tuck things into. So I was able to tuck in, you know, my glucose gels or my fruit snacks, my meter, a little Ziploc bag with some test strips in there, and spread those out around the belt, which made it a lot more comfortable when I was running. You know, if I were biking, you know, you can have something on your bike, or you can wear a fanny pack. It's a lot easier. But for running, it was just so much better to have that flat belt, where I did interval training. So having my phone so that I could hear the intervals and the music, with my headphones in that belt, just made it so much easier for me to do that. So that's like a kind of a tool that I recommend, regardless of whether you have type 1 or not. I mean, just being able to carry your phone or whatever in those supplies is really great. So
I've used that belt too. It's called a flip belt.
yes.
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 Yes, that's I've used the same one. I love it because it kind of looks like the top of yoga pants.
Yeah.
All the slits are really great for. I just ate one because my blood sugar is a little bit low. The fruit strips, though, I highly recommend the flip belt. It was the first thing I got when I was trying to exercise with T1D. So I think I've actually had mine for like almost 10 years. And just the best thing, because those little slits, you just grab it right out while you're still moving. And yep, highly recommend that.
Yeah. And they're not, I didn't find mine to be uncomfortable with the spy belt and some of those arm things. I felt like I was managing them a lot while I was trying to focus on exercising. And that just was, it just was uncomfortable. So the flip belt, yeah, has been my favorite. So one of the questions that we have is, what is your ideal go-to food for a balance of carbs and protein before a workout?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually really like, one of the things that I use a lot when I'm backpacking is actually tortillas and peanut butter. Yeah, so I'll, because one, it's thin, so I can carry a pack of tortillas and little peanut butter packs. But I actually also keep them at my desk. Like if I was in the office, I would keep them at my desk. And sometimes I just consume one within an hour, sometimes 30 minutes if I'm going to the gym. For me, it's a good, I use oh my gosh, the name just totally escaped. The Mission tortillas, the carb balance ones. I use those in the smaller size with peanut butter or almond butter, or the sunflower seed butter, depending on what you like. I just do that with the tortilla. That seems to be a good balance for me. And I use those backpacking. I use it going to the gym. That's one of my go-tos. Another thing that I sometimes like with those fruit leathers, that is one of the things, if my blood sugar is just a little bit low, I don't like to exercise if I'm below 100. So usually I'll use one of the fruit strips to bring me up just a little bit. And then sometimes I'll use another one depending on what kind of exercise that I'm doing. If I'm cycling, I like to start at a little bit higher of a blood sugar, just because I have a tendency to coast down as I'm cycling, depending on the terrain. If I'm cycling up big hills, then I have a tendency to have an influx of glucose as the glycogen storages break down. But if I'm doing pretty standard terrain along maybe like the Burke-Gilman Trail that's fairly flat, I try to start with a little bit higher of a blood sugar. But the other go-to, if I need like a protein bar, I never bike without a protein bar. I like to use the Think protein bars. They have a pretty good balance of carbs are about 24 grams of carbs and then 20 grams of protein. So that's a pretty good ratio. So that's another go-to for me.
Yeah, I really liked the perfect bars when I was
Oh, yeah.
training.
Mhm.
Those, and if you are okay with peanuts, that's the thing about them, is that they're made mostly with peanut butter and other delicious things thrown in there. But they're like the regular perfect bar is, it's like 27 carbs and 17 of those are protein. So that worked really well. I would eat one of those and not bolus for it if I was doing a longer training run. Yeah, and I know a couple of other people that really like the perfect bars, just for before their runs or after like a run for recovery too. Yeah.
Yeah, those are, I like the protein or those perfect bars as well. I just thought of one other thing when I'm hiking or backpacking. I always carry dried fruit, especially mangoes. The other thing I carry a lot to get a good protein amount of protein, because I often pair glucose with protein on all meals. If I'm doing hiking or backpacking, I only bolus typically 50% if I do have some carbs in that meal. Sometimes it also depends on how hard the hike is, how long, but again, figuring it out, kind of trial by fire. I love the, often you see the meat and cheese sticks that don't have to be refrigerated. I carry those a lot while backpacking just to give me a little bit of a protein hit.
There's a question in the chat about what were the bars that had the 20/20 carbon protein? Were those the Think bars?
Yep, I got one here. I tried to provide my desk full of, it's got all my goodies.
Yes. And one thing that we use at summer camp actually are the Extend bars. And we use those when, we use those at night. So when our campers, oftentimes they're not used to doing as much activity typically through their day as we do at summer camp. And so they tend to dip lower. And so one of the things that we do is after retreat, kind of a dropping low or an emergent low, we'll then have them eat an Extend bar, which has protein in it and helps kind of maintain their blood glucose in a safe range as well. Personally, I don't like Extend bars. I don't like the way that they taste, and so that doesn't work for me. But I also can't do the gels. And I know, Andrea, you love those gels. So I carry the extra weight when I exercise or when I hike, and I'll do juice or other things because I just, I tried the glucose gels when I was running, and that did not end well for me. So, we all have to figure out what works for us. And I think the biggest thing, and we mentioned it before, what I want to reiterate, is that your diabetes may vary. What is going to work for me and what is going to work for Andrea and you is going to be different. These are our experiences, and it is so much about trial and error. As we know in dealing with type 1 anyway, there is no one type of exercise or one specific reaction that is going to be true for everyone. So these are things to put in your toolbox, but understand that you're going to have to figure out what are the best tools for you as you go through your exercising journey, and it may change for you too. What works for you now may not work for you later either. So welcome to type 1 diabetes and exercise.
Yes. I know I've definitely changed what I've wanted or needed throughout the years of hiking and backpacking and things like that. Mott's fruit snacks are another go-to. Yeah, I learned that from camp that I love those particular types of fruit snacks. But yeah, the glucose gels, the Transcends work for me, but other ones such as like the GU or the honey stingers don't. They're a little more goopy. So you have a tendency to drink a lot of water, which isn't convenient when you're running, right? Because you're not always running with water bottles. So I have a tendency to use the Transcend ones, which are a little more liquidy. They're also 15 grams rather than like some of them that are like 25 or 24. I sometimes don't need that much and don't want to spike either. I don't know about for you, Catherine. If my blood sugar gets above like 220 when I'm running, my time just tanks.
Yeah.
Like just absolutely tanks. I feel like a total slug Like, I'm just like, oh, okay, this is not going so well. But I just thought of another thing. One of the things that for recovery, if you do need something with like a couple grams of carbs in it and need some electrolytes, one of the things I also use is called Liquid IV. One packet has about 12 grams of carbs in it. It's also good for maintenance. I've used it while hiking to just have something quick to sip on for a little bit of maintenance. So that's another one of my go-tos is I actually carry those. I always carry electrolytes while I'm backpacking as well. If you want something without sugar, there's some really great sugar-free electrolyte options, some good flavors. So I like the Ultima, it's called, but I'm big on the electrolytes. And we all know, like, while exercising with diabetes, hydration is a really important thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that it's huge. It's so important to have water available, whether you're carrying it with you or you make a plan for where it's going to be located on your route for whatever it is that you're doing. I mean, obviously, if you're hiking or backpacking, you're carrying it, or you know where there's going to be access to a good running stream, things like that, where you can get fresh water, obviously with the filter that you're carrying. But if you're running, there might be, stops along the way where you can get hydrated, things like that. So it's really important, as with other things that we do living with type 1, that you make a plan. You make a plan for what you're doing and have a contingency for that, because it doesn't always go how you think it will. It might, which is awesome. I love when it does, but it doesn't always. And so just making sure that you know what you can do if it doesn't go to plan.
Yes. Yeah, one of the things about planning is I make sure somebody knows where I am. That is a big thing if you want to use like a GPS, if you're out in the remote areas, which sometimes I am, having a plan. Like I have a remote that will help put out an emergency signal if I need it. If I'm on a run or a bike path, I let somebody know that I'm going. And also, one of the important lessons that I learned the hard way was to say I'm biking or something is if your blood sugar is going low, it will happen, and don't keep going. Some people are like, I'm not going to let it stop me, but it is important for your safety to stop and consume the sugar. And there is no shame in taking an Uber home from your run. I have done it. Many of my running friends have done it. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I was a really avid hiker when I was younger. I did a 50-mile backpack through the North Cascades when I was in high school. And after I was diagnosed with type 1, I was 25 at the time. And it just, like I said, I wanted to prove to myself that I could do the things I did before. It was a matter of figuring out how to do them. And I'm still working on the hiking. For whatever reason, I still have a lot of apprehension about being in the backcountry and whatnot, and just with the uncertainty of it. But all of that is to say that I remember the first hike that I did after I was diagnosed, and I did Rattlesnake Ridge. And I don't know if you all are familiar, beautiful outlook. It's not one of the more strenuous hikes in our area, but it's not a walk up either. It's not super flat. Anyway, but I remember I went on that hike and I brought all of this stuff with me. And I think that to get to the top, and it's only like 2 miles, right? It's not a very long hike, but to get to the top, I consumed 2 juice boxes, 6 glucose tabs, 3 fruit leathers, and some Skittles. And that's what it took to get me to the top. And I think I stopped 4 times in those, 2.1 miles to do it. And it was frustrating, because I was hiking with my husband at the time. And I was just, for me, it was frustrating because physically, like, my muscles weren't sore. I could have kept going, except that my blood glucose was dropping. And it was so frustrating to have to stop. And I think that's one of the things that I've had to contend with and really figure out how to manage, is that frustration in that your blood glucose is a physical factor, right? But like my muscles and my energy level, I'm fine, but my blood glucose is getting to a point where it's not safe for me to continue, and having to stop was really frustrating. And so taking the time and practicing with, okay, what do I need to do to prepare? What foods am I going to eat so that I can keep my blood glucose up? What am I going to do with my basal rate so that
Mhm.
it's going to be in a safe range when I go do this exercise and this hike? And depending on whether you're on a pump or whether you do, MDI, it's going to change how you manage that and how you figure out what's going to work for you. And even the insulins that you're taking are going to change what that is, right? And it's frustrating to me that I'm like, well, I can't just be as spontaneous with it as I used to be. It takes so much more prep, but it's worth it. It's worth it in the end for me to get to the top of, Rattlesnake Ridge and get to stand up there and say, I did this. It took,
Mhm.
however many carbs to do it, and I did it. And I don't like, for me, this is one thing that my mom taught me. It's not but. When we say a but in between there, it negates everything that came before. I did it and it took these things, right? That's how I was able to do it. And I just want to encourage you all that when you are, whether you're starting your exercise journey or if you are starting a different type of exercise or you're starting over because you didn't have type 1 and now you do, it's worth it. It's worth it to keep going and figuring out what is going to work for you and understanding that it's okay if that thing doesn't work for you.
Mhm.
That's fine.
Mhm.
Figure out what is going to work for you, and work with your diabetes care team and talk to your friends and talk to people that, and that's, I think, why many of you are here, is figuring out and learning from other people, what works for them. But I would just say keep going.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That feeling of accomplishment, I know specifically with hiking, when you get to the top, it's just like, oh my gosh, just incredible, empowering. There are quite a few pictures at the top of me chugging juice boxes, which always makes for like a fun story as well. Like you're like, why are they drinking a juice box at the top of this hike? The other fun thing that it's fun to run into other T1D hikers. I've been out and spotted someone's pump, and I call it diabetes in the wild. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, me too. And it's been like a fun way to connect with other people. And there's some, I really, like Catherine said, Rattlesnake is a really good one. There's some really great hikes around Issaquah as well. I just say, yeah, like the Poo Poo Point, Cougar Mountain, some of those. When someone's really getting into hiking with T1D, I definitely say start short. Start the short hikes first. Play with different distances. Play with different elevation gains. Elevation can be a tricky thing with T1D. Different people act, their blood sugars can fluctuate. I don't need quite as much insulin when I'm at high elevation. And that's also due to the amount of work my body has been doing. So my insulin sensitive, I'm very sensitive to insulin, but it's trial and error, carrying your favorite snacks, but not giving up is a big part of it. And sometimes I know for me, some of the conversations I have with the people hiking, like, hey, I have T1D. There is a chance that I'm going to need to stop and eat some sugar. And most of the people are like, oh yeah, no problem. Honestly, they're probably happy to stop too. They're like, oh, I get to rest. So, because like a lot of people need that rest, but they won't say they do. So a lot of times the people are actually happy to stop with you. So that is what I found. So.
Yeah, when I was training for my half marathon, I did so with my sister, and it was just so great to have a training partner that understood, what I needed, and I could say, like, okay, I just need to take a minute and see where my blood glucose is going. I think I'm going to be fine, but I need to walk for a little bit, whatever it was, or I just need to stop. And having that other person who, whether they live with type 1 or not, but just had, empathy for the situation was so helpful in going through that training process.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to, one of the things that I've done is train, like when I'm not low or high, but before we go on the hike, is like how to talk to me to encourage me to keep going. Is like what things I like to hear when like, it's like, not, oh, why is your blood sugar like that? Which feels to me a little more accusatory. Like, oh, hey, if you'd like to, can you help explain why this might, or not why, I don't like why, but what led up to a blood sugar such like this? Can I help? Do you need help? And like, I don't need someone to panic because I'm already panicking inside, and them being like, oh yeah, it's no problem. Let's take a break. I need the break. I always love it when they're like, I also need the break. So, but having conversations with people of how to talk to you too, especially when you're doing really, really strenuous exercises. Yeah. So like, such as getting up a mountain when your blood sugar's like 75 and you're just like, this is hard and I'm slightly lightheaded. Like having someone to be like, let's stop, or, having that, you can do this, you got this, I'm here, I've got glucose. Another thing is traveling with someone that is also carrying your extra supplies is another big part of being prepared. Is I hike with someone who also is carrying sometimes an extra insulin pen or glucagon and fruit snacks. So I think being prepared is a big thing about not only being like physically prepared, but mentally prepared. Like if you're going to do a strenuous exercise, make sure that person that you're exercising with knows how to talk to you so they don't make it a more frustrating situation. They make it still a positive one. So
That's a great point. I really appreciate that. And for me, when you say about talking about things, I have hypoglycemia unawareness, which is one of the reasons why I fought to get a constant glucose monitor. And I'm so grateful that I have one, because I don't notice or feel my lows until I'm like at 60 or below. I just don't notice it. And so I talk when I'm low, and I just keep talking about whatever, so that whomever I'm with, or I'll call someone. If I'm alone, I'll call someone else just to be on the phone with somebody. So that if something does change in my mental like capacity, they can hear it in what I'm saying.
yes.
Because that is like the first indicator that something is not going in the right direction. So like you say, having someone that's either with you or that you can call if you're going on a run or a bike ride, just having that contact with someone else who can check in with you and help you if you need it. Hopefully you don't, but it's good to have those systems in place before you go out for your exercise. Yeah. And, we've talked a lot about more strenuous exercise, but going back, I want to note going out for just a walk, going out for a walk around the block when the stay-at-home orders were first issued in Washington back in, what was that, March, April? I don't know. It was forever ago. We got outside every day. Every day we got outside and we took a walk around the block in our neighborhood, which is just a little over a quarter of a mile. We would do that twice. When you're doing that with a 2-year-old, it's a little bit different than when you're walking alone. But even just that, even that quarter of a mile every single day made a difference in my blood glucose and the way that I felt. Like just getting up and getting my body moving, and even that short walk, I felt better. And it's amazing how those small things can make such a positive impact. And there isn't as much of that prep of, needing to make sure that you have a pit stop along the way, whatever. But my mental health felt better when I got up and got my body moving. My blood glucose was just slightly better when I got up and I just got my blood flowing and moved my body. And it's not about, doing, a through hike in the Enchantments, which is very impressive. And I'm a little bit envious of those who have gotten to do that. Because it's gorgeous. If you've never seen the pictures, look them up on the internet. They're amazing. But those things are wonderful. And so is doing a quarter mile walk, doing a mile walk, getting your body up, doing morning yoga, You know, we did yoga with Maddie over our conference, which was so great. Just doing and finding things that get your blood flowing and your body moving in ways that they weren't previously is so good for you and your mental health and for your blood glucose. It will help you. There are some really great, you know, simple exercise videos that you can watch on YouTube, especially now with all the stay-at-home orders. There's so many wonderful free things out there that you can utilize to just get moving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as much as the through hike for Enchantments is fun, it's 4 days, and I don't have 4 days all the time, or I don't have a whole day to go hiking. So I also rely on little walks. One of my favorite things is to pour my cup of coffee and just take it with me and do a little 5-minute loop around the neighborhood. My dog also likes that, but sometimes I do it by myself too. And I'm just, after lunch is my other one, to just kind of help that food digest too, is to do just a little walk. Because a lot of times, I don't have the time during the day to do a full workout. And sometimes, you know, I maybe get 2 big workouts in a week. Sometimes I only get 1. And that is just so like, I just don't have the time, or, you know, life interrupts. And so there'll be weeks where I just don't work out. And so the 10-minute walk, the 30-minute walk, if you need to make a call, or one of my things is if I have to be like on a call, but I'm not speaking, like I have it on my headphones and I'm going for a little short walk in a quiet area. Just kind of working some of those things. I know it's hard right now when it's getting a little cooler, but that just means more pockets for glucose gels, right? With more jackets. So, but just even that little, like Catherine, I think you just made a really good point about it doesn't have to be this big to do of an exercise. I love YouTube videos, yoga with Adriene, or things like like Catherine said, there's so many apps out right now that even if they are paid, they have a 30-day free trial or a 90-day free trial. And so I think it's, you know, always finding what works for you. My best friend, who's also type 1, does a completely different kind of exercising than I do. So, you know, it's just very personalized. And with the adjusting your basals is basals and bolusing and meals. Yeah. So you can do it. That's all I have to say is you can definitely do it. It might seem overwhelming, but there's huge communities such as with Connected that I've been able to connect with other athletes that are similar. And it's all just like, hey, sending them a message over Instagram. How do you do this? Like tips and tricks, like reach out to your community. People love to be helpful, even if they have type 1 or if they don't have type 1. People love in general to be helpful. You're not a burden. You're all trying to trudge through this. People are always willing to help you. I know sometimes getting through that, like, oh, I feel like such a burden, can be a hard hurdle, but you're not. People are very understanding and being like, yes, it can be frustrating. It can interrupt things, but ultimately, like if they're your friends and they're your family or your community, they love and they care about you and they want to do everything in their power to help you. So.
Yeah, I would encourage you to not let the fact that you have to manage and figure out your blood glucose while you're exercising stop you from asking any of your friends or family to be your exercise buddy. They, in my experience, they are more willing than perhaps my apprehension may have told me. And when I have asked, they have said, yes, let's do it, and I'll preface it and say, okay, well, just so you know, I might have to stop more because of that. And they're like, cool, just tell me when, and we'll go and we'll make it happen. So just find your people and make it happen for you. So that is just about the end of our time. And if anyone has one more question, I think we have time for one more. But I just want to say thank you so much, Andrea, for joining us and sharing your experience with us. And to everyone here in the audience, thank you for being with us today. It's been so great to be with you all and to share these conversations and to be in community. And this wraps up our Remix conference as well. We have our scavenger hunt, which that information will be posted shortly, and you can check that out. But thank you all for being a part of it, and I hope that you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you all so much.
Bye, everybody.